Hi guys, it's Luetin here. Welcome to the Battlefield 4 Roundtable. Joined today by Daskro and Matimio. Slightly smaller panel today, but obviously we're going to be talking about the blog post by EA Dice talking about Battlefield 4, some of the new, explanations of things, some that we already knew, a little bit more information, some new information, but it's pretty exciting. I think a lot of people are kind of sort of going to be freaking out over this over the next few days, and it's going to be analysed to the nth degree. One of the first things I noticed, though, was some of the first little bits that they sort of mentioned was about what they wanted to do in the game, was about bringing out the best team player, about having a more versatile and highly specialised soldier. I'm not sure if they've worded that the best there, but overall they're kind of talking kind of has the feeling that we already had about it being about the team. They really want to focus on it being about the team, but at the same time they really are giving people the ability to kind of specialize down and down into these very individualistic roles. Matimio, first of all, do you think it's a good thing what they're doing? Do you think it's going to affect play positively, and are they moving in the right direction with the things that they've announced here?
Well, I don't think it's ever a bad thing when you give players more options to play the role that they want to, and they kind of explain that in the article for like the Recon class. You no longer just you kind of don't really have to do that already in Battlefield 3, but it sounds like you have more options, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But the one thing that is kind of worrisome is, are they blurring the lines between the classes, and are they making it so that there isn't a defined role for each, and it can kind of get muddy there. And that's kind of the nice thing about the Battlefield franchise, is that you do have these defined roles. So I'm not exactly sure how I feel about it overall, though.
Yeah, I do kind of feel a little bit the same. Dasko, what do you think? Because, I mean, I think people have said, and I have said, and I'm sure you guys have as well, that one of the best things about Battlefield that really, really made it work was the fact that you did have these very specific roles, and that kind of encouraged people to play those roles in a specific way. But once you start sort of watering them down, like for example the support class, it has the LMGs, but you can also now have carbines, and you can also have DMRs, the direct sort of marksman rifles, so sniper weapons. You're going to have things like the G3, long range engagements there. Dasko, do you think how do you think it's going to affect the game? Do you think it's the right thing to do there, like sort of Matimio is saying? Are they going the right direction here?
Well, I think we have to wait and see until when we actually play the game in the beta, or when it comes out live in just a few months from now. I am a bit more optimistic about this, because I think at its core it's about class balance and class differentiation. And in this respect, we have a lot more variety of ways that the classes can be useful on the battlefield. And I like that idea, because in many respects, the classes in Battlefield 3, while many of them are neat, some of them are way superior than others if you actually want to play as a team, contribute to your team, and get that victory.
Yeah, well, let me just bring in something that relates to specifically that then, to kind of jump into a kind of topic further down the list on the blog post. And what they were talking about is with the specializations, the field upgrades, okay, the sort of perk systems that you go down. Now, we've already looked at the offensive, the defensive ones, we've kind of seen this. But what they've talked about today is the fact that within each class, you can now go down two routes of specialization. And their example, one of them was talking about the engineers. And so you have your offensive tree, you have your defensive tree, but then you can also go into being a specialized repair specialist there, but you can also be an anti-tank specialist. So I think that's what you're talking about there, that what they're doing is making each class kind of even more specialized. You can be like an elite repairist, or you can be an elite sort of anti-tank, or you can just go down the standard offensive defensive role. So you're still sort of sitting within that kind of, your class would probably play out similar to how it does now in Battlefield 3. And Matimio, do you think that's a great thing? Do you think it's going to be an exciting sort of new way to go? It's definitely going to give people a lot more options as to how they want to play, whether they want to go down one specific path and play like a really over-specialized role.
I think it's great. I like it a lot, because one of the things I liked about Bad Company 2 was they had kind of that distinction, at least for some of the classes. Like if you wanted to play the medic, like you could be full on Rambo and use the LMGs and just mow everyone down. You could get like, Magnum ammo and a couple other things to make your weapons just amazing. But then if you actually wanted to play more of a support role, you could have an increased radius on your med pack, or it would heal people faster. And that was one thing I really enjoyed about Bad Company 2 and was a little disappointed that it wasn't in Battlefield 3, and it looks like that's the direction they're heading. So I think it's a good thing. I do like that direction.
I think one thing that it will do is it means that as a squad, and let's not forget, you now have 5-man squads. So again, the fact that they increase the customization and the specialization, and the fact, coupled with the fact that you have a 5-man squad, means that you're really going to be able to build a very specific squad on exactly what you want to do. And people that are playing together as a squad rather than just randomly pubbing sort of individually, I think they're really going to be able to get the most that they can out of the ability that they can really over specialize. Daskro, let me bring you in about sort of competitive. What do these specialization changes that they're talking about here mean for competitive play? I mean, also the fact that we're going to have 5-man squads, so again, you're going to be able to see a little bit of a difference there. It surely has quite big implications there, doesn't it?
It certainly does, both for competitive and for more casual players, and it's because of this one reason. It's because that all of these paths that you can take, they're a total of 10 in total. You won't be able to achieve those paths if you're playing in a squad that is dying a lot, because once that squad gets wiped, it's not going to reset the entire thing. Initially, I had thought and was told that at E3, but in the language that we see within the Battlefield blog post, that you will get a penalty. You will go back down a certain amount within that bro bar experience, whatever it may be.
Yeah, the bro bar.
And a tier down, maybe a half a tier down, whatever it may be. But I think that for some players who are not used to playing with their friends or their buddies and are just used to more going Rambo, they may find themselves at a slight disadvantage going against other players who may have, for instance, the armor perk, reducing the incoming damage that you get to your chest, or I like this one because this is a throwback from Battlefield 2. Medical unit. Occupied vehicles will slowly heal nearby soldiers. That was certainly the case within the BF2 when you had a medic within your vehicle. Those kind of things are definitely throwbacks from the old school Battlefield days, which I'm really excited about. From a competitive perspective, it means that the players are going to be a whole lot less aggressive, because there's really no penalty in BF3 right now to be very aggressive. If you get wiped, if you're getting wiped at the enemy's base, that's okay, because your enemy still got a good 15 seconds before they get to your base, 10-second respawn time, you're still at an advantage. Here, if you die out, you're going to go back a few increments depending on what the end state looks like, and the enemy team may actually have an advantage in this respect. I'm taking a wait-and-see approach. I think that a lot of people in the public server realm may find this to be a bit difficult at first, but I think that they'll find that, oh no, I can play more classes than just Assault, and I can actually rank up faster in this bro bar by doing things like putting a tugs down or putting a recon ball down. Yeah. So I'm again generally optimistic. This is a good thing.
No, I think you're right, and I think as well, at the face of it, it can seem a slightly sort of negative thing, because people immediately, and I guess my first thought when I saw it was like, oh man, they're putting way too much into this. It's going to sort of mean that classes sort of disintegrate. They can't really sort of do what they're supposed to do. But when you actually look into it, what you start to see is, as we say, with the field upgrades and so on, but also the amount of specializations they're putting in. There are a lot of specializations coming in now, way more than we've ever had before. And the specializations really give specific upgrades to certain things in the game. So, for example, it says here, new medkits upgrade increases the maximum deployed medic bags and packs. New motion sensor upgrade increases the maximum inventory of motion sensors, increases the range of the tugs and the MAV. When do we go down to armor? So this is an interesting one. New armor specialization reduces the incoming damage to the chest. Now, I wonder what people are going to feel about things like that. But there's other things as well, like upgrading sort of the ability to repair vehicles, so you can repair vehicles much more quickly. There's some vehicle ones as well. So, for example, medical supply and repair. Occupied vehicles will slowly heal nearby soldiers. They will also be able to resupply soldiers, and occupied vehicles will slowly repair nearby vehicles, which is a kind of weird one, isn't it? You can imagine sort of a tank taking damage. Jeep pulls up and starts to repair it, you know.
I remember competitive BF2 days where you'd have a tank and APC tag teaming like WWE wrestling. repairing each other in tandem and taking shots for one another, all while the repair aura was all taking place. Some really exciting times back then. One thing I want to mention, though, is that I think one of the big differences that we see here with Battlefield compared to other upcoming FPS titles is the differentiation of the fact that this isn't just the arms race of more perks and more abilities and more customization. No. It's actually team-based, and we haven't seen that before, and that's where I think it's really cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, Matimia, what do you feel about this? The fact that they're kind of building this team unit. I mean, do you have any sort of pre-ideas about sort of how you might want to play now that they've got this extra specialization out there? What's it going to mean for you as a player? Like, how would you want to go with this kind of specialization? What kind of team would you want to build towards, do you think?
Well, I think a lot of Battlefielders are going to be in for a pretty big rude awakening that when they realize that they don't really play with their squad that much, especially when they're just in a public server. Because, they basically just use them as like spawn points, and that's it. And then they go run in a random direction. Like Battlefielders like to say that they're team players and it's all about teamwork in Battlefield. And while I completely agree, it's a lot more than other games out there. Like if you really look at it, it's just a spawn point. And so I like this direction because it's not going to force people to play together. They even say if you want a lone wolf, you'll still have that first tier unlocked. But for competitive play, but also just for pubs and just in normal matches, it will hopefully get people to stick together a little bit more and play like a squad. So I really like that. Yes. The one thing I am worried about, though, is the armor. It's that one perk in there that I'm a little nervous about, because even if it's just one extra bullet from all different ammo, all different guns, one extra bullet to drop you is a pretty big advantage when, if they don't have that perk, because you're going to drop them faster.
It does. Always. I will just note though, it does say reduces incoming damage to the chest. So maybe if you get shot in the back or the side, it's not going to do it. I don't know, but I think it's not going to be like a universal. Let's call it juggernaut, okay?
Which is good. Which is good, and it will promote getting headshots more, and it will. But like, I'm still nervous about it, and this, I'm just a little hesitant, and I trust DICE. But when you put in something like Magnum ammo or an armor, like they had in Bad Company 2, especially Magnum ammo, you had to run that if you wanted to be competitive. You had to. And so this is kind of the same thing, maybe a reduced version of it, but that's why I'm a little hesitant when I saw that.
I think that's fair enough, and I think that in all honesty, there's a lot of things to be nervous about with Battlefield 4. But I think in some ways you can kind of embrace that. You can kind of, in many ways it's kind of good. I mean, don't you think it's good as well? Like there is some things that make you a little bit uneasy because it's a bit exciting. You're kind of like, how's this going to go? Is it all going to fall apart?
Well, I want to be excited. I don't want them to
no, exactly. But I think a good thing is what daskro was saying is that, like for example with the vehicle repairs, they've clearly looked back at their sort of back catalogue of games, their whole experience. DICE have been making games for a long time now, and I think what is a good sign for me anyway is that they're still sort of, they're not sort of like just having meetings and going, right, what can we do that's new? What can we do that's new? We've got to come up with some new ideas so that people feel like they've got a new game. That's not what they're doing. What they've done is they've looked at their whole catalogue of titles and gone, okay, what did people like? What did it work? What are people asking for? Let's try and get these ideas. We'll try and build them into the new game in a way that works and is more interesting so that players can get a sort of a larger experience overall. And I think that's really where they're going with Battlefield 4, is they're building on their years and years and years of experience to create this all-encompassing best experience, and it really feels like they're going there. And I think, for all the people who had said before now that this was just going to be Battlefield 3.5, really need to just shut up and go home, because it's pretty clear that that's not at all what this game is. They really have gone into a lot of detail in a lot of ways, and I don't think this game is going to play anything like Battlefield 3. I think it's going to play completely differently. It may have a outward appearance of looking similar to Battlefield 3, but even then, not that much. And I think that, as much as anything else, I mean, Level Cap mentioned so much about the sound, and I think daskro, you said about this, didn't you, about how the sound kind of is much greater in Battlefield 4, and that's one part of it, pulls you in. And I think that's what this is. We have all this extreme specialization, which is going to make the game play out in a different way. But the look and feel of it is just as important as anything else. I know when we were sort of at DICE when we went to Sweden, that's one thing they kept saying was about this kind of look and feel. They really want to sort of pull people in, really sort of immerse people into it. And I think that kind of also affects how you play, because the more immersed you are, the more sort of, the more you feel what you're doing, the more you kind of really push forward. Daskro, you've had some experience already with Battlefield 4, obviously playing it. So building on that, from the things that we've learned, you generally have a positive outlook and you feel like they're definitely moving in the right direction. But looking at DICE as a company overall, you have good confidence that they're moving towards the right place?
I do have good confidence with them. I had a number of critiques about the current Battlefield 3 franchise that I had made almost 8 months ago in regards to issues of balancing, and this feels like a movement in very much the right direction. I really love the fact that they are focusing so much more on team play. I hope that they do it in a way that is accessible to people, because I don't want people to have a bad experience where you have to be completely team focused, and if a person who only wants to play an hour a week wants to jump on, if they're not part of a team, they're going to be in trouble. I don't want that. I want to have that accessibility across the spectrum of players, and I think that as long as they're able to pull that off, then I'm going to have confidence for them.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the more specific, just little bits and pieces that are in here. So some of the more, the equipment based. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
And I do want to mention a few of the things, because there are two things that I have noticed here that I have not seen mentioned before. The first thing is the M2 Slam, which is a type of anti-tank mine. It's more for light vehicles and infantry and stuff. So maybe it's sort of similar to a Claymore, maybe. But
when you say light vehicles, what are you talking about there? Sort of Jeeps and stuff?
Like Jeeps and IFVs and those kind of things. So what is that going to look like? I don't know, but that's a new kind of engineer mine that they can, or explosive they can use. The other thing that I saw that is also kind of interesting is they mentioned that there is going to be a maximum ammunition for the M224 mortar. To me, that means that they are revamping the mortar, because as a lot of you guys know, mortar is a cool concept and a lot of fun to try to use, but it's actually not that effective in a lot of situations. Now, for certain rush maps, it's a whole different story, but I'm curious now, are they going to do something different with the M224 in terms of, it has a maximum amount of ammo, and you shoot your 3 or 4 rounds and you're done. Yeah. What does that look like?
Well, me and Matimo were talking about the XM25 as well, and how that's going to play out. Did you get a chance to use that? Was it you heard of?
I did.
So talk about that a little bit, because I think some people were a little bit worried. And also, I was kind of curious as to how they managed to build the XM25 compared to its sort of real-world counterpart, because I think, am I right in saying that I read a little bit about it before, it fires kind of grenades that sort of scatter, and it can kind of burst mid-air or something along those lines? Does it operate in that way in-game?
In-game, you can either fire at people directly or you can fire above people, and it does indirect damage. It's not a lot of damage. I'd say maybe each round could maybe do between 10 to 15% damage per shot if you aim well, which is to say that even when you fire your entire magazine at someone, it's not going to kill them. But it's a weapon that really can soften them up. So you can finish it out.
So again, a teamwork weapon, really, sort of, to sort of.
Yeah.
Does it suppress as well?
I wasn't attacked by an XM25, so I don't know. But okay. I will tell you that it actually is good in scenarios in which you know that there's a guy behind a wall or behind a boulder of some sort, and you want to still get hits on him. Because if you have an M320, unless you are a super good M320 shot or an LVG shot, you're not going to be able to do any damage to him. But this, you just need to fire slightly above it and they'll start doing damage to it. I think that's really cool and a lot of fun. It reloads ammo pretty slowly, although at least this was the alpha. But it's very intuitive to use. It's not it's pretty straightforward, but it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, unlike what some people have been saying. Those are the two things that I saw that really kind of piqued my interest, because that is the M224 ammo and the M2 Slam. How is the AT mine going to be different than the M2 Slam, and then how is M224 going to be different as a mortar in this game versus other games?
Definitely. I think one thing that I'm quite excited about is the fact that we're having fly-by-wire missiles come back in the FGM SRAW. which obviously was in Battlefield 2. Quite excited about that because fly-by-wire missiles really bring in a whole sort of different style of gameplay back in. And obviously people remember from Bad Company and Battlefield 2 we had sort of fly-by-wire options. So I am really looking forward to that. One thing that's going to be very interesting is how powerful it's going to be. They did make specific mention in this post talking about how they wanted to bring in all different kinds of weapons. So they're saying that they're going to have high damage weapons that are more challenging to use, like the RPG, or fire and forget smart weapons with lower damage. So they obviously have tried to make a kind of balance here. But having said that, we all know right now that the heat-seeking missiles for lock-on, they're pretty powerful. It's like a one-hit disable. So
yes.
it's if they're keeping on par with that, it's not going to be that weak. But Matimio, what do you feel about fly-by-wire missiles? Are you a big fan of them? How do you think it will affect the gameplay in terms of sort of ground to air to ground, whatever?
I like them. I was terrible with them in past Battlefield games, but I want to clear something up because I can't remember if this was true that the RPGs in the SMAW, if a target is laser designated and they're in the air, you can lock on with them like you could in Bad Company. Am I right about that?
I did not experience that in the alpha.
I have heard that this week as well, but I haven't seen anything confirmed. So Gamescom and other stuff.
I did notice I could lock on with the other one. It's not the Javelin, it's the Law. I was able to lock on quite often with that, but the RPG and the SMAW or SMAW equivalent, I didn't have the opportunity when there were laser lock-ons to actually do anything different with it.
No.
Okay. Well, regardless, I think that it's basically going to be a stationary tow missile turret. That's cool. And if for the players out there that get really good with them, have you guys ever seen those montages where they just snipe helicopters all day?
Oh yeah. Oh, I love the tow missiles, both on vehicles and stationary ones. They're very effective, as they should be, because even though that RPG does require a lot of skill, I will tell you that hitting moving targets with the wire-guided missiles, it can be challenging if they're moving, because not only do you have to recognize where that enemy is going, but you have to recognize where your enemy is at the given point of flight, so that when you make a course correction, it doesn't overcorrect and it hits it just
That's right. I mean, I think if they're basically going to be creating what would effectively be a TV missile, but for people to use on the ground, you're still going to have that skill difficulty there, like you say, of being able to predict and course correct on the go, because otherwise you're just going to miss far. As soon as if they move last minute, that's it, you're screwed. So you really need to be kind of watching sort of what that player is doing, what they're moving around. There's some other bits and pieces they're bringing back in, or bringing in, rather, I should say, the portable laser designator for snipers. So it's basically like a SOFLAM but on the go. So I do think that's going to be pretty powerful. I think they say that the trade-off is that you can't just deploy it and have it auto designate targets. Well,
good.
That's fine by me.
It's fine, but I think it just adds in. I think what they've like we're saying, what they've tried to do is they've tried to make people sort of look at the classes and sort of see what else they can do with them, and I think that's quite an exciting thing. And I think that having a portable laser designator is really great, because you can, there's many times where you don't want to have the hassle of setting up a SOFLAM, but you would quite like the option.
It'll be a pain in the ass.
It really is. It sort of completely interrupts your flow. And if you're playing that kind of more on the move sniper, this is absolutely perfect, because it brings in the ability for you to be able to support your team, but it doesn't compromise the kind of role that you're trying to play. So if you're playing point-to-point aggressive recon and you're moving up, supporting your team, but hey, there's a helicopter in there, no problem. You just bring out your SOFLAM, your portable SOFLAM laser designator, point it at him, get him designated until he goes down or moves away, and then you can just get straight back on into the game. You don't have to worry about setting up a SOFLAM or whatever. So that's a really, really exciting thing. And
I'm really looking forward to the fact that Recon, with one of their two upgrade careers, they can get multiple tugs and MAVs out, and they get an increased range out of them. And you get, or excuse me, I misspoke. It's the maximum number of motion sensors in your inventory, and your tugs and MAV increase in range. I think that's really cool, because it means that it's not just I am a recon at one point providing ISR in a given little area, and if there's no guys there, then I'm just bored. They can actually be on the move and throw a lot out there and have almost like a big web of sensors that provide intel to their teammates. I love
definitely.
that.
And I think we can just sort of touch very quickly on a couple of things that they have sort of mentioned about before. Now, suppression is obviously a big thing that people worry about and talk about a lot. Now, we already know that they have changed up the suppression things a little bit, in that, snipers and LMGs are going to be the main ones affecting at range. They have said that suppression will not affect people at close range. So if you hadn't seen about this already, close range combat, suppression will not affect. So it's going to be down just on the skill of the players. Suppression isn't going to come into play there. They haven't specified what close range is. 10 meters, 15, 20 meters, we don't know, but it's going to not affect you there. But it's good that they've really listened. And also we're talking about the fact that suppression will affect the sway of your weapon. So you'll get more sway in the weapon, but the bullets will still be accurate and on target. Matimio, this shows surely that DICE are listening to the players, they're giving them what they want. It's a positive thing, and I think, again, to tie in with what else we've been saying, that surely backs up the sort of confidence there that, they're on the ball, they're listening to what people are doing, right?
Definitely. I mean, just the fact that it's no longer random bullet deviation and that you can correct if you're good enough, and you can correct for the sway when you're suppressed and kill your target. That is night and day from what we currently have. For the average player or the guy that just jumped in, you're not going to see a whole lot of difference there because you're just not used to the weapons. But for people that really want to master, Battlefield 4, they're going to have that, and it's going to feel like it's more skill involved than just randomly spraying bullets when you're suppressed.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really what the kind of crux of this kind of, the points that they've made here in these announcements is that it seems very much like they're putting the kind of intelligent choices back for players. They're putting the skillful players back in the game. And they seem to have really sort of listened and analysed those things back and forth.
There is one area that I do have concerns about, and it's related to the career paths we're talking about, the bro paths, or bro bars. Excuse me.
I'm going to rename it. That's never going to work for me. I'll just.
and that's this. They mentioned about how that when your squad gets wiped, you take a hit in your progress. You don't get wiped completely, but you do take a small hit. The one thing that they did mention in here that concerns me is that they talk about how that you can leave your squad and join a new squad, and as you do this, your current progress will be saved. In my mind, this may be an exploit that could be utilized by others where they know that their squad's about to get wiped and they don't want to lose a portion of their progress, and so we get this big merry-go-round of squad swapping just so that you can maintain your amount of progress.
Oh, so when they've died, they see their allies about to die on their squad, and they're like, yes. All right, switch in different squad real quick, and then it's saved. They're good to go. Yeah, actually,
because remember, in your respawn screen, you will see their perspective in the bottom left corner through the spectator mode capability, and that's what I think is a bit concerning to me. Is that at least in competitive play, and you see a lot of squad hopping like this because you want to be able to get a spot on the one person who's at the one off point so you can bomb it and move around accordingly. I think that's a terrible aspect of competitive play because it then becomes a gaming of going into your menu and changing squads, and to me that detracts from some of the best elements of the entry play. I hope that in Battlefield 4 we don't see this again, and I thought first off that when we had a penalty for your squad being wiped, then it would provide incentive for more players to play a bit more conservative and to think a little bit more about before they run in with a bunch of grenades or into a place where they're obviously going to get mowed down. But if here there is a way around that, that concerns me.
They could just put like a little barrier, like maybe 7 seconds after you die, you can't switch squads. Like that would be an easy fix.
In Battlefield 2, the mechanic was you could only switch squads when you were alive. You couldn't switch squads when you were dead. Or you could do the opposite. You could only switch squads when you're dead. You couldn't switch squads when you're alive, or whatever it may be. But I agree with you, Matimio. If they create some kind of very simple mechanic, be it a time delay or be it a condition delay, whatever it may be, I think that may mitigate.
I think something that's worth noting with it is that the actual field upgrades, which is what we're talking about here, it has to be worth their while to do it. You have to look at sort of what benefit they gain from it. Now, if you actually look at the offensive and defensive field upgrades, offensive starts with sprint, it goes through to extra ammo, more grenades, and the final one is reduced fall. The defensive path goes armor. Okay, so you have that extra armor chest plate. Okay, then you go cover. All right, so extra cover from suppression. Then you got extra flak, and then the last one is quick regen. Don't know how quick that's going to be, but that potentially could be a pretty good one as well. But you see, both of those specialization trees, the field upgrade trees, they don't seem like they would massively be overpowered if you sort of lost it, you know. I think I remember when I spoke with Level Cap about this on one of our previous chats. I kind of said, like, you know, were they going to be massively overpowered? Was it something that, you know, when you saw a squad that was fully upgraded, they'd be like destroying everybody else all around? And he kind of said, like, no, it's not like that. It's like a little bonus, you know. It gives you like a little bit of benefit. And I think that's the thing here. Is the key is that I don't think I would be too worried about it. In fact, I don't think I'm too worried overall about the field upgrade stuff in terms of, you know, are some squads going to be at a massive disadvantage compared to a squad which is really playing elite? I think what's going to make what will make the biggest difference is if one squad is really good and one squad is not. You know, that's still going to be the primary thing that really affects people playing, is the player skill. That's really going to be the biggest deal. I don't think you're going to see a squad which is just fully upgraded and just destroying everybody else. And you can see it from the description that they give here of the offensive defensive. And then when you go into the other things, it's like extra mechanics or anti-tank soldiers. So yeah, they're going to have like a little bit more specialization there, but again, they're kind of compromising the kind of more general aspects of those upgrades. So I'm not too worried about it in terms of field, you know, jumping between squads, because like you say, you know, it kind of has to be worth their while, you know, to take the trouble to swap squads. I think what you may see, like you've said, Daskro, is that I think, for example, public games, it may be worse because maybe people feel like, oh man, you know, this squad's really doing bad, I'm just going to jump out. So you end up with a lot of different players all kind of grouped in different places, and it could become a bit chaotic. Maybe it sort of undermines the kind of whole teamwork aspect there. Maybe, you know, you're sort of, maybe it'll make public games a little bit worse if people do get into the habit of this sort of jumping in and out of squads thing. But I don't know. Matimi, you got any further thoughts on it?
Well, I think you're right that the specializations aren't going to be this overpowered. Like, if you don't have them, you're going to suck. But that's kind of like how it is in Battlefield 3 already. I mean, you've probably been in a squad where everyone is running ammo, and you still do well as long as you know what you're doing. And I think the same is going to be true for Battlefield 4. But there are some in here that are pretty sexy, like the stealth one, the spot one, the MAV. Like, there are some in here that are going to give you a pretty big advantage. Like, spotting your enemies longer, like, that's a pretty big bonus. And not to be, I think one is you aren't spotted as long. That's also a pretty big bonus. So, I don't know. It'll be kind of hard to say. Yeah, we're all going to have to wait and see.
Yes, I think, I in retrospect, I think, listening to you guys, that I do have to agree that, well, it may not be that big of a deal. It may be so small in nature that while it may give you a 1 or 2 or 5% impact to whatever variable they're tweaking, it doesn't make up for the fact that if you can't shoot well, don't have good situational awareness, then you're still going to lose.
Definitely. And I think as well, just to sort of say one thing, you know, we're talking about things that, like Daskro and Matimio say, you know, the best way to really find out about this is to just wait and see. You know, the beta is going to be here very, very soon. We've also got Gamescom coming up, and there's going to be a ton of stuff there. Everybody's pretty excited, I think, to sort of see what new things they roll out there. They're going to show us some new maps. They're going to show us different things there. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, also the last thing I'd probably say is to the people that say, you know, stop talking about things that we can just wait and see about. It's just speculation. Well, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're all in here because we love this game, and talking about this game and thinking about the mechanics of the game and how it's going to work is what really makes it successful. It's what builds the community, and it's what DICE listen to. You know, DICE people watch the videos on YouTube, they listen to the community, they listen to what people say. So when you are having a conversation and having a narrative as a community, they listen, they get involved, they look at what's happening. And at this stage in the game, it's not too late for them to start tweaking and thinking, hey, you know, is this definitely the right way to go? Or do we want to maybe sort of tweak this just a little bit to sort of make it work a bit better. And so all of those things are really sort of part and parcel of being a good Battlefield community, and all sort of just getting involved together to sort of make the game the best that it can be, because this game's going to be here for a while. So we want it to be the best that it can be when it finally comes out. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining today. If you've enjoyed this video, drop it a little like. Please look below at daskro and Timio's channel. Go give them a little visit. Thanks for joining me today, guys, on the Roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
And guys, I'll see you next time for some more Battlefield Roundtable. We've obviously got games coming up, much more Battlefield 4 content on the way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.